Good afternoon, everyone. Allow me first to thank Afore Consulting for convening this conference, and thanks to you personally, Nick, for having me on board. It's always a pleasure to be back because you have an impressive audience. So don't be stressed, because it's always stress when I take the floor. So I have 20 minutes, 4 points, 5 minutes each. 3 about my capacity as IOSCO chair, you see, and 1 as FSMA chair. You see, it's the marketing that I'm using, fascinating for a supervisor. No, more seriously, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would like to speak about 4 things. First, IOSCO work on protecting retail investor in light of ongoing technological development, and the objective is to have a real added value, not to repeat, not to copy and paste what already have done in other, I would say, global bodies of supervision. Second item for my speech, artificial intelligence, its uptake within the financial sector and IOSCO approach to artificial intelligence. Third aspect, which is, I think, also very important, because I am the first one to say that we need a break for many regulation at EU level and on international level, so you can record it and send that to through LinkedIn. And it means that IOSCO chair, this year it's about implementation of a fantastic, successful roadmap about sustainable finance after the endorsement of ISSB standards by IOSCO and interoperability with EU standards. The same for our, I would say, our toolkit and our regulation for proposal of toolkit for the sake of supervision of crypto and digital asset. And it means that I will also speak, third issue, about the effort of IOSCO to encourage implementation of our recommendation. And last but not least, if I may, in my capacity, not as IOSCO chair, my comment, without, of course, again, any political legitimacy, but as Belgium supervisor about crypto asset supervision in the EU, because we need to think out of the box, because the situation is not the best one for the time being, from my personal point of view as FSMA chair. So why, first of all, IOSCO? I presume that you know my traditional element in language. Even as IOSCO chair, I am not the chair saying that we need to be everywhere about everything, only when we have an added value. And our added value is, of course, to develop, implement, and promote adherence to internationally recognized standards for capital market. And why IOSCO? I think it's a place to be, because, of course, our membership is very impressive. We all together, the NCA, 130 jurisdictions, and it means that all together, US SEC, CFTC, French IMF, Dutch IFM, German BaFin, UK FCA, and Belgium FSMA, and of course GFSC in Asia, for instance, we all together are involved in various capacity in the supervision of, ladies and gentlemen, 95% of the world securities market in some 130 jurisdictions. We have also a majority of growth and emerging market, which is, I think, important to stress, especially when we speak about digital agenda and what it means for the young generation. Is by definition a cross-border challenge. It's by definition we are speaking about cross-border risk and opportunities. So that's the reason I think that I may say, even if, of course, I'm not objective in my capacity as co-chair, that IOSCO principle and recommendation have shaped a great deal of EU regulatory frame. I'm not sure that so many people in this room know that many aspects of re-regulation about asset management, hedge fund, benchmark, credit rating, and the new adopted ESG rating regulation has been inspired, I would say, by high-level non-binding principle endorsed by IOSCO. It was the case from day one for UCIT management, even UCIT 1. Some years before, you had, I would say, a release by IOSCO principle. The same, of course, after the subprime crisis with the launch of a new, from scratch, new supervision of rating agency. But before that, you had, of course, a useful set of principles developed by IOSCO. And it's rather normal, I would say. when you have to convince you decision maker at national level, your government, your Minister of Finance, it may be better to tell him, I have a new government in Belgium. Yes, we can, from yesterday, and with a new Prime Minister at the Parliament at the time that I'm speaking, Bart de Wever, I would say, when you have to explain to government that there is a consensus at global level with regulator involved in the supervision of 95%, it's much more easy, I would say. And of course, we don't have any political legitimacy, but when I see what we have been able to do about sustainable finance, our call of our action was to say, look, at jurisdiction, if you think that you need to do something, why not to use ISSB standards in order to require, to allow the use of these standards or to be informed? My objective was 130,000 companies at the end of the day using this language, the same language with some different accent. Not sure that everybody convinced by the quality and the beauty of Belgium statistic, but 1 year after, I had the pleasure to invite again during the annual meeting in Athens this year, last year, Emmanuel Faber, and we had on board 57 jurisdictions on board, of course, including 27 member states. And after 1 year, it means that all these jurisdictions, it means 56% of the global GDP, 40% of the global market capitalization, including in the apple pie, the US, and 90% of them are using a Scope 3 tools. So it means that our call action was really a game changer in this, also because I think that we never vote, by the way, but I think a bit faster than the United Nations. I would say it means that there is consensus. So that's the reason why I think that I will have to elaborate a little bit about what we are doing at IOSCO, which means, first of all, our retail investor weeks. For people involved in the follow-up of our discussion, it's not a surprise. We have 3 core missions. I would say transparent integrity of market, financial stability, and of course, protection of investors. But it's fair to say that from an ethical point of view, the focus was at the start of IOSCO more about B2B, I would say, market infrastructure, wholesale aspect. Now we are switching, it's one of my personal objectives, to what can be useful for John and Mary in the street, at least from an international point of view. So it means that we are more and more focusing about retail investors. And this year, ladies and gentlemen, 2025 is the year of a new retail investor work, which is managed by my excellent colleague and friend, Derville. Derville was there this morning, I would say, sorry, who is coordinating the work conducted by many different standing committees. And so the reason why we thought that we have to be on board, because there were some discussion, let us be clear, it's not or at least it's a public secret some years ago, but why do we need IOSCO? Most of the time, consumer protection, also from a legal point of view, it's only designed, at least in Europe, at national level. But of course, digitalization up, and so they change the world. So it means that given these technological changes and the increasingly cross-border dimension of retail participation, financial market, IOSCO had to be there. And so that's the reason why we have reinforced our work in this area. And that's also the reason why IOSCO has designed a specific strategy, 5 waves, to combat online arms and mitigate risk of fraud and mis-selling for retail investors. And as part of this new dedicated roadmap in 5 ways to retail investor online safety, IOSCO has recently published, so it means in December, we have recently published proposal which will be finalized in the next month. The first one, ladies and gentlemen, it's about Finfluencer. I had the pleasure, George is there. George hosted our European Regional Committee that I'm so joining. We have a very useful discussion about Finfluencer. For instance, so it's not in order to be polite with you, but that was the case. A presentation by SciSec from Cyprus about what it means, Finfluencer, why does it work? Yeah? It's about smart people, fast, easy. It's very useful to understand how it works and then to see what we can do as financial supervisor. And that's the reason why we have published, I would say, a consultation report about Finfluencer to foster a safer, more transparent digital environment for retail investors. Second consultation paper on copy trading to promote better oversight of copy trading platform. And last but not least, one of digital engagement practices, things like gamification and targeted prompt. Of course, we don't have to think that a private life is something different for professional life. If you are using, especially for some of you for the time being, you app, you screen, it's also the case when you invest, especially when you are a young citizen. So of course, for us, the world changed. Also about the message. How can we communicate our expectation? How can we explain that? So it's another approach, and that's the reason why we thought it was important to have a consultation report on digital engagement practices, things like gamification and targeted prompts, to make sure they promote informed and safe trading behavior. Second aspect of IOSCO approach is the IOSCO approach to artificial intelligence in financial sector. Another, I would say, aspect which is important for us is, of course, I would say, an issue that has gained recently significant attention over the past few years, and of course it means artificial intelligence and its use within the financial sector. Just to tell you the following, I'm not sure that everybody knows that the IMF dedicated a whole chapter in his famous October 2024 Global Financial Stability Report. FSB has also published its initial findings about the impact of artificial intelligence on financial stability. And we will have the pleasure to organize again, second time that we have the pleasure to organize a conference with the IMF. Last year, during the spring session of the IMF, it was about private credit. This year, it will be, ladies and gentlemen, about artificial intelligence. So it's a new chapter in the successful roadmap history of IOSCO, and the partnership that we have more and more with the IMF, the World Bank, OECD, and of course the FSB are also something which is a good translation of this very positive evolution learning curve of IOSCO. So what does it mean? In other words, I would say as far as IOSCO is concerned, I would say different aspects which are important. First, generative artificial intelligence and relating technological development have the potential to increase the efficiency of capital market across core activities, including trading, investment, asset allocation. We are not against technology, innovation. At the contrary, we are not working in a very tower. Artificial intelligence is already being used across financial market ecosystem, for instance, to optimize portfolio management, improve internal research capabilities, to analyze complex unstructured data, or to make investment recommendations. But beside this positive aspect of opportunity, there are, frankly speaking, we need to be proportionate, to have a balanced approach. If we want to be successful, there are also substantial risks that must be addressed to safeguard investor protection, market integrity, and financial stability. Let me share in a nutshell some of the examples of the risks we identify. First source of potential risk, as artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence tools become more accessible, there is growing concern, ladies and gentlemen, about this increased use for financial advice. For example, I would say, do you know that according to a recent private sector report, we anticipate that generative artificial intelligence application would likely become the leading source of retail investor advice by 2027. I don't have to elaborate on this, okay? More access for John and Mary in the street, but what about, I would say, the added value and so of this kind of research? So there is, I would say, something to be addressed, and that's what we decided to do. Second source of example of risk, a float of biased investment advice represents a risk to retail investor that IOSCO is determined to tackle. Artificial intelligence-driven high-frequency trading could also lead to potential flash market crashes. Third source of risk, the high concentration of artificial intelligence model supply could also lead to herding behavior with detriment impact on underlying assets and investors. The objective of IOSCO is obvious: is to develop a shared understanding. We are a membership organization. We learn from each other, also in our last meeting in Cyprus. And the objective is to develop a shared understanding among IOSCO members of this issue, risk and challenges presented by emerging artificial intelligence technology, and through the lens of market integrity. That's our added value, not to repeat the job already done by the FSB or by the IMF. Financial stability, yes, also we are also involved in financial stability, and of course investor protection, as well as assist members in their policy responses. And if deemed appropriate, IOSCO may consider tools or recommendations that will provide guidance to IOSCO members on how to address risks and challenges posed by artificial intelligence. The appropriate form of guidance will be determined by the findings of ongoing fact-finding approach, figures, fact, and then we see what we do if we need to do something at international level. Third aspect, especially this year, as I told you, 2025, the focus is also about implementation, toolkit, sustainable finance, but also about what we have been able to do about crypto and digital asset, our famous recommendation, for which we didn't, by the way, feel any pushback, because people understand what we are doing with our toolkit. We are not reinventing wheel. We are just asking to people in this business, look, try to do like manager of trading venue, asset manager. That's what we required with from asset manager or from trading venue for more than 30 years. How to avoid conflict of interest? What about price discovery? What about the necessity to have a segregation of asset of you carrying versus you? Something obvious for many of you, if you used to be a victim of people like me for 30 years, it's quite obvious. The challenge for many people, I would say, in this business is that it's about the outreach, because most of them are fast movers. They do not know what it means, of course, FSMA, but even IOSCO, even SEC, even FSB. So the capacity to have a sufficient level of outreach, that's, I would say, instrumental if we want to be successful. And that's what we are doing, especially this year, and taking into account, of course, the cross-border nature of crypto market, the risk of regulatory arbitrage, and the significant risk of harm for retail investors. And that's the reason why it was rather obvious that those risks fall, ladies and gentlemen, within IOSCO mandate to protect investors and promote the integrity of financial market. One of 4 primary goals is to promote greater consistency in how IOSCO members approach the regulation and oversight of crypto asset activity. And this is why we already took measures to enhance collaboration and cooperation between IOSCO members. And of course, therefore, we have the best marketing tool for IOSCO, that's the MMOU. When I arrived for the first time around the table of IOSCO, already 20 years ago, it was the first year of the multilateral memorandum. At this time, we exchanged 50 times a year information about, I would say, a possible case of insider trading, market abuse. 20 years after that, it's 6,000 a case every year. And the speed is important. And when I sent a request information to the other Jean-Paul Servais, another local supervisor, even far from Belgium, I received, ladies and gentlemen, an answer in 95% of the case in less than 100 days. If you have people in your family who are public prosecuted, tell them that they will be a little bit nervous. So it means that what we are able to do as IOSCO members, it works about in cooperation. And we are using this MMOU, which can be instrumental in order to fulfill international cooperation between our members in cross-border investigation regarding crypto asset fraud. And that's already what we start, I have to tell you, with some first cases. A year has passed since the publication of a recommendation, and it has become clear from an initial internal stocktake that jurisdictions are at different stages of implementing framework to regulate crypto asset IOSCO. And this is normal, and it means that IOSCO has an important role to play to help jurisdictions in this journey and to reduce market fragmentation. We are determined to play this role. And I have to tell you, for this also, we work with IMF, who is used to say that they are using our toolkit whenever they go inspection at national level for the famous Article 4 and EFSA. And now, due to the fact that I see there is a last comment about, if I may, that's the hidden agenda as FSMA supervisor, about MiCA and crypto asset supervision in the EU. For this, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, I will be a little bit short, but wishy-washy, I would say. Because the crypto asset market is, of course, by its very nature, borderless, and it's much more cross-border than its traditional financial product and services. So, of course, we start with the 5th directive AML, and now we have the passporting regime foreseen in MiCA, which we inform this reality with, which is a good step. But I have to tell you, that's my personal point of view, I am not the spokesman of ESMA, and I don't have any political legitimacy, that despite the entry into force of MiCA, crypto and digital market present high risk for investor protection and anti-money laundering. Supervising crypto asset service provider require a new kind of expertise and technical know-how, and its borderless nature also weakens our supervisory and creates a risk of supervisory arbitrage within our single market despite the entry in force of MiCA. And the question is, in fact, to see who is the best place to supervise. I am not the guy saying it must be either ESMA or NCA. The question is, who is the best place? For some aspect, that ESMA, third countries. I would say when you have to start a supervision from scratch. That was the case after the subprime crisis, because rating agencies most of the time don't have legal entities. That was also the case in Belgium. Excellent job done by ESMA. The same for some aspect of the benchmark regulation, let us be clear. But here we are speaking about a new aspect of protection of retail investor, which is absolutely unique. For the first time, from scratch, you had a sector without any regulation and the capacity to have a direct dialogue between very sophisticated crypto asset service provider, platform provider, and unsophisticated investor. Therefore, take into account, I would say this, I think that even if most of the time the protection of retail investor is usually best dealt with at national level, it's not the case here. Because, first, major risk for investor protection and AML than the crypto market doesn't exist, I think. So we have a very, very important challenge for that. Second, the cross-border and technical nature of this activity. And last but not least, the vulnerability to unlevel playing field. And that's the reason I think that there was a miscasting, let us see, when we designed the AML and also MiCA. I think that we need that it has to be supervised directly to ESMA, because AML, the 5th directive, was useful for know your customer aspect. Most of the time I think that in a say, but when we speak about absence of segregation, we see a total absence of a level playing field. So we need for that to have, I would say, a supervision at the level of ESMA, because this single supervision at European level would enable a more effective supervision of the crypto asset market and ensure a better protection of European investors, in particular the younger generation of investors. It would also, ladies and gentlemen, facilitate international cooperation, since European supervisors would speak with one voice in their contact with counterpart supervisor of global platform in third countries. And this is, I think, it's a shame to say that, a missed opportunity in MiCA. So, in my view, and that will be my last comment, dear Nick, in my view, the possible future framework of MiCA 2 should remedy this while also take into account the IOSCO policy recommendation for crypto and digital asset market. Again, it's an impreneuristic approach. For some aspect, for sure, it must be managed at national level. For instance, supervision of information provided by listed company. We need access, but with a rule book established at ESMA level. Supervisory convergence, we are working on it. But for some aspect, we have also to think about who is the best placed. And with a totally new business, starting from scratch, I would say, with from day one a real question about the absence of total level playing, we need to think about a possible direct supervision by FSMA. I try to convince FSMA also for that, because that's not an easy job. Thanks for your attention.